The New York Jets have a lot to do this offseason. I'm going to break it all down with a special guest, James Dignan. Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I'll be discussing the Jets offseason with a special guest. Before we get started, just wanted to mention you can follow on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the Just Jets podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. So don't want to keep you too long. Want to get right into this video. If you're on football TikTok, then you absolutely know who this guy is. If you don't, well, give it a watch, and I think you're going to like what he has to say. All right, I'd like to welcome on James Dignan. You could find his content on TikTok and YouTube at James Dignan FB. James, how's it going, my man?
I'm doing as good as a Jet fan can do, man. How are you?
Doing good. Really appreciate you coming on. Been following your stuff on TikTok for a long time now and just love the content. So just wanted to say thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. I actually watched your YouTube videos before I started making content myself, so I'm happy to be on.
Beautiful. So that kind of goes into my first question, actually. It's kind of a two-parter. So first is what made you a Jet fan, or why are you a Jet fan? And then part two to that is what made you go from Jet fan to I want to be NFL content creator kind of a thing?
Right. So my dad did me the favor of making me a Jet fan. I grew up in Manhattan. I moved to Jersey when I was 9. So I grew up in the middle of the city. It was split, half Giants, half Jets. I like to say that I got tricked into being a Jet fan because my first 2 years were 2009, 2010. Went to the AFC Championship 2 years in a row. I'm like, yeah, all you guys are losers. Like my team is so like we go to the playoffs every year. We're beating Brady, we're beating Manning. Like we're so good. I was wrong. I was led astray. So that's how I became a Jet fan. I'd like to say I was tricked. And then for creating football content, there's videos and pictures that my parents have of me of like 7 years old with a little headset on and writing articles. I think when I was like 9, I made it my job that summer. I'd go to the basement, put on a little suit, and I'd be writing articles. And so it's always something I wanted to do. And then with COVID, I wasn't able to play football anymore. That's a work in progress. But then I wanted to start talking about football because I missed it too much. So that's how I got into creating content.
Dude, I love it. That's an awesome story. I too, from a young age, I'm a little bit older than you, but for me, it was Curtis Martin was one of the biggest reasons why I became a Jet fan. Just loved watching, the jersey up there, loved him. And I live not too far away from Hofstra where they practice.
Okay.
So growing up in the early 2000s, I would go seemingly all summer long and just watch him practice. And
That's awesome.
like I remember the Brett Favre year, it was insane the number of people who were going to watch the practices. But yeah, my dad got me hooked too, so kind of in the same boat there. So now for what we saw in 2021, just going off of like where this team is at and stuff like that, what do you look at and say, okay, these are the positions that the Jets need to attack this offseason?
Well, it's promising that quarterback isn't on the list for once. For once, it's been pretty much since I started watching that quarterback's been on that list. I think that's definitely taken care of. And I really loved the rookie class. I like the job that Douglas has done. I like some of the guys he brought in free agency as well. But the defensive line needs to be addressed. We don't have a pass rusher. We haven't had a pass rusher in forever. I know we had Sheldon Richardson. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year in like 2013 now. And Muhammad Wilkerson, we gave him that huge contract and then nothing after that. There was no production. My dad likes to say that Jonathan Abraham was the last real pass rusher that the Jets have had. That's still before my time, and I'm watching for a decade plus now. So we need a true pass rusher. Secondary has to be addressed as well. We could talk about if Marcus May should be re-signed or not. I'm in the boat that I probably don't think he should going into 29 and coming off the torn Achilles, but secondary has to be addressed. And then the interior of the offensive line still needs work. I like Elijah Vera Tucker, but I think we need a center and a right guard as well. I would say those are the main ones. And then the Jets haven't had a tight end in forever too. So I guess, but that's not to me as high a priority as the other ones.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned it right there with Marcus May. So I agree with you. I think they probably let him walk, and especially after the injury and his age. So what would your plan be at that position? Do you think that's one that they should look at and improve on in free agency, or is that a draft kind of a need?
I mean, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so seeing Kyle Hamilton on the Jets would be wonderful. But at the same time, I think it's better to attack that position through free agency. I think with the picks that we have, I think Quandre Diggs has been linked to the Jets pretty consistently now. I know Jesse Bates is going to be a free agent, but it's very unlikely that we end up with Jesse Bates. He's probably going to go back to the Bengals. I think Quandre Diggs is a realistic option. I'd be happy if they brought him in as a replacement. But I think there's more pressing needs and more value at the top of the draft with our draft picks that we could use.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. I think with Hamilton specifically, I think he's a great player and is going to be a good player at the next level. I just don't know if the Jets have the luxury of spending the fourth overall pick at that position. Or is that kind of where you're at too, I guess?
Yeah, when you have so many other holes to fill, you can't be drafting a safety in the top 5 or 10. We're not so far off that we're taking just best position available because we have no talent. I think we're at the place where we're in that second step of the rebuild. We have some parts in place, but now you got to start plugging the actual holes on the roster because it's not where we were with Jamal Adams, where there's nothing here. Let's just get some talent in on the team. That's not where we're at.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned offensive line, tight end. Agree. I think they need to continue to build out the offensive line, and tight end is just a gaping hole right now. Are there any players in free agency there that you have circled that would be a good fit here?
I think for tight end, the one that all Jets fans are talking about is Dalton Schultz. I would love to see Dalton Schultz come to Jets. He's a decent run blocker, and he obviously was great in the passing game this year with the Cowboys. Mike Gesicki is going to be a free agent as well. It'd be nice to see him as a Jet, but he's not a run blocker. I think the Jets need someone who can block as well as catch the ball. And yeah, we're probably going to overpay for Dalton Schultz, but when you haven't had a tight end since Dustin Keller in 10, 15 years ago, I think it's okay to overpay for a guy who's a borderline top 10 tight end. I would say he's around the eighth best tight end in the league. And for the Jets, that'd be a massive upgrade. Give him whatever, give him 8, 10 million a year. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on Dalton Schultz. And I think the Gesicki point you made is an important one because I see, in my comments all the time on YouTube or Instagram, whatever, people say, oh, Mike Gesicki. And he's a bigger name guy. So I get the link, but I don't think people realize the importance blocking as from the tight end position plays in this role. And for him specifically, I don't see him as a fit.
No, I think he's trying to get tagged as a wide receiver because he took like 90% of his snaps from the slot this year. He's practically an oversized wide receiver. So he's a glorified slot receiver. He's not a real true tight end, which I think the Jets need.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. And then, okay, so how about the offensive line? You mentioned specifically center and right guard. So is there anyone in free agency where you're like, okay, I have them circled like a Brandon Sheriff or someone like that? Or would you rather go into the draft and fill the offensive line needs?
I think if you could get him in free agency, absolutely. Give him what he wants. I got no problem making him one of the highest, if not the highest paid guard in football. I'm okay with that, but I want Linderbaum in the draft. I really
Okay.
do. I really do. I know a bunch of Jets fans wanted Creed Humphrey last year, and I like the way that the draft shook out last year, but Linderbaum in the center of the line where and you maybe I mean sure if it's that'd be tough. That's a tough sell. Douglas has not given out a contract as big as Scherf would demand, but I would be very happy if those were the two moves we made in the offseason. That'd be ideal to me.
Okay, so you mentioned Linderbaum, and a lot of Jet fans do agree with you on that one. They want to see the center position upgraded. So if that's the plan, right? Let's say, for instance, they use whatever pick 4 or 10 on Linderbaum. What are you doing with McGovern then? Are you moving him to guard, or are you just moving on?
You're either moving on or seeing if he'll take a backup role because the amount of injuries that the Jets had this season, the amount of injuries that there's been on the offensive line, really for any team, it's very hard to have these guys be in the trenches 17 games in a season and not go down at any point. So we've seen when guys like Connor McDermott come in, and it is it is brutal when some of these backup offensive linemen come in because you just assume your guys are going to stay healthy. So more than likely they'd move on. But if they're able to get maybe a pay cut and take a backup role, I guess that'd be okay. But I'm not as concerned about him as getting a stud in there.
Gotcha. Totally fair. And just while we're on the topic of offensive line, where do you stand on the Mekhi Becton situation? Are you worried about him going into next year, or do you think he bounces back?
To me, it hasn't become a situation yet. Like
Okay.
I don't understand where the label really came from. I get it's a concern. It's a slight concern to me if he's not able to get his weight under control, because I just think he's playing too heavy. There's no way you can move the way he's trying to move. The human body is not meant to do what he's doing. It's just not. It's like Zion. Like you're gonna keep getting hurt if you're that big. It reminds me even of Chris Jenkins for football. Like, you cannot be that huge. It doesn't matter how talented you are. So as long as they're able to bring his weight down, I think it should be okay. It's only if he comes into camp overweight and then he gets hurt in preseason or early again next year, then to me it becomes a situation. But for now, amazing left tackle. Happy we have him. Hopefully he gets his weight under control. But as of right now, I don't see it as a situation just yet.
Okay, I'm with you there too. I think it's getting blown out of proportion a little bit in that regard. Talking about the draft and just free agency in general, where do you stand on the wide receiver position? Are you someone who thinks that they should use maybe pick 10 on a wide receiver? Would you rather see them trade for one of the names on the market? What's your feel there?
There's a ton of talent coming through the draft every single year, and there's also a ton of talent already in the league. Personally, I think Calvin Ridley is someone that we should target this year for a trade. I think we could probably get him with either one of our second round picks. I don't think we'd have to sacrifice a first. I don't think he is extremely talented, but especially with the way that this season went and the question marks that are going to come with that, I feel like a high second is a fair price to ask for the Falcons. And I feel like for the Jets, if you're able to get someone who you already know can be a top tier wide receiver in the NFL, and the Falcons see it as fair price, which I believe they would, I feel like it's a good deal. You already have Corey Davis, you have Elijah Moore, you have Braxton Berrios, who came on as they started to use him the right way at the end of the year. I don't think you need much more than that. And I also think there's other more pressing needs for the Jets than wide receiver to be using that in the top of the draft.
Okay. I think that's totally reasonable and a good way to look at it. If Calvin Ridley's, all good and is ready to come back and play football again, I agree. I think it's a no-brainer for the Jets. Now, at the top, we kind of talked about the rookie quarterback and how we liked the progression. What were just overall thoughts on Zach as a rookie, and what's the feel going into his sophomore season?
Yeah, I was worried about Zach at the beginning because I saw flashes. I saw real flashes where he looked great, but he never seemed, and before his injury, he never seemed settled. He seemed like a quarterback that had already been sacked 10 times a game for like 5 years, and he had happy feet all the time. He was never setting his feet. He was always looking to make the big play. He never looked calm and comfortable. He never looked confident. There were moments where he'd have great plays. I was at the Bengals game. I was at the Titans game. The Bengals game was Mike White, but that was just a great moment for the Jets. But for that Titans game, when he threw that 50-yard bomb to Corey Davis, I was losing my mind. Like he looked pretty good in the Titans game. But when he came back from injury, totally different quarterback. He wasn't turning the ball over. He wasn't risking the big play. There was one play, the main play that made me feel confident in his progression. It was, I don't remember the exact time, but in that Bucks game, he had like a 40, 50-yard bomb on the run that almost got intercepted. I think he was going for Keelan Cole on the left side. It went out of bounds, so it wasn't picked off, but I was completely like taken back. I was like, why would you do that? Very next play, gets in the same position, rolls out left again. There's no one there, and he decides to throw it out of bounds. He learned from the previous play, all right, we're not going to turn the ball over here. We have a lead. There's no reason for me to be trying to play hero ball right now. So I think his decision-making progressed tremendously, and he's always had all the talent in the world. That's why we took him at number 2. I think if you surround him with you protect him with a good offensive line, and then you get some good weapons around him, and we're able to stay healthy, I'm full belief in Zach Wilson.
All right, there we go. And Zach wasn't the only rookie here. You also had a rookie head coach and a pretty young staff around him. What were your just overall thoughts on Saleh and his staff and them going forward here?
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to make a strong conviction either way on Saleh because when you have so many guys going down with injury, we weren't a very talented roster to begin with. Truthfully, we Jets fans, we always like to say this is the year, and but at the same time, we knew this year it wasn't happening. We didn't really have a ton of talent on the roster. Carl Lawson goes down preseason. Mekhi Becton goes down 30 seconds into the year. You got Zach Wilson going out for a month, Corey Davis going out for a month, Elijah Moore going out for a month. Michael Carter missed a bunch of games. Marcus May missed half the season. We didn't have a lot of talent to begin with, and then a lot of our talent got hurt for portions or the entire season. So I like the job that he did, all things considered, and I like the way that LaFleur looked, the play calls that were coming out in the last month specifically of the season. The Jets, they looked like they had an energetic and promising offense. The play against Miami with Barrios and like the throwback and all, like they were using their weapons the right way towards the end of the year. So I'm excited to see what they can do when guys stay healthy and they have a more talented roster. I also think it's too soon to say Saleh is definitely going to be a great head coach or LaFleur is going to be a great offensive coordinator. I believe in them. I think they will be, but I can't say definitively either way. I don't think based on just this 1 year, I don't think you could say either way for sure.
Totally. I'm in lockstep with you there. So here's my last one for you is this. What is your expectation or maybe I guess goal for the 2022 Jets?
Well, the goal this past year was just to see how the rookies play, see how the young guys do, see how the clock is managed. But now, like I said, we're getting to that second step in the rebuild, right? We want to start seeing results. So I would say for the team in general, I would want to see I think you made a video. We just want to be in the hunt. Like
Yeah.
we just want to be in the hunt. We don't even need to be in the playoffs yet. And I genuinely believe that's where we need to be next year. I think the goal is to make the wild card. Really, the goal is to win the Super Bowl every year. But the realistic goal next year is to make the wild card. And if they fall short and they're just in the hunt, I feel like that's acceptable. Unless like Zach Wilson, God forbid, tears his ACL in like the second game of the season, I don't feel like there's a reason we shouldn't be in that position next year. I feel like that's the logical next step. That's the logical progression based on how well we did this year and all the talent that I believe we're going to get back and be able to add. So I would say somewhere around 9 wins and being in the hunt or making the wild card is general expectation. And then for Zach Wilson, maybe 27 touchdowns, 8 picks, somewhere around there, around 4,000 yards. That'd be fine as long as he's not turning the ball over, 15 or 20 times in the season.
Yeah, I totally agree on both those stands. With Wilson, I think it's a matter of what we saw at the end of the year where the turnover numbers went down. I think, that's got to continue. And you're right, man. If they're just hanging around in the hunt, I think all Jet fans would be happy. So with that, where can people find your stuff? Let them know.
Yeah, so on TikTok and YouTube, I'm James Dignan FB, and then I'm going to be doing an off-season series on YouTube where it's similar to this. I'll have creators on, talk about their favorite team, go through the rundown the way that we just did here about the Jets.
Love it. Thanks so much. Can't even speak today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and James, we'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good, man.
Just want to thank James again for joining me on today's episode. It was a ton of fun. Please make sure to subscribe to him in the comments below and follow him on TikTok for all the best Jets and NFL content out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll talk to you next time.